अथ सेवाफलम्।
सेवाफलम स विवरणम।
Devotional fruits for devotional service. The scripture talking about the result of service and its details was created in Vikram Samvat 1582 by Sri Mahaprabhuji in Agra. This scripture was created through the cause of Vishnudas Jipaji, but Vishnudas Ji found it very difficult to understand. Therefore, he has also given explanation of this scripture because it is very important to understand the result of service for his followers. There are various kinds of services offered to Supreme Lord, which Mahaprabhuji has explained in all his scriptures like Siddhant Muktavali, Pushti Prabha Maryadas, Siddhant Rahasya, Chatur Shloki, Sannyas Nirnay Granth, Nirodh Lakshanam, etc. If all such services are executed in similar fashion, this is now, he is explaining the situation that arises as a reward of those services. Here question arises that he has always maintained to execute expectation-less, nishkam devotional service, that is devotional service without expecting anything in return. Then why he is explaining here about devotional fruits? But the intent of this scripture is to satisfy the natural curiosity of Vaishnavas engaged in service of Supreme Lord, is all about their position in this material world and position after they leave the current material body according to their services. He is giving details about it here in this scripture. In this scripture, along with the Sevafal, reward of service, Seva Vivaran, that is details of reward of services, is also taken. Out of Sri Mahaprabhuji, all 16 scriptures, the only Sevafal scripture is that for which explanation in the form of commentary is the only given by himself.
Yadrushi sevana prokta tatsiddhau phalamujyate alaukikasya danehi chadya siddhen manorathah phalam vahyadhikaro va Nakalotra niyamakaha.
Verse 1, verse 2, line first.
The kind of service Sri Mahaprabhuji has referred, you are thus telling her here about the result that can be accomplished after achieving perfection in the service. When transcendental, that is bestowed, then previously said desires get fulfilled, youthfulness, mindful service, mansi seva, and that reward of service or right to obtain the reward. Hence, there is no regulation of period, any time, or righteousness of the entity. Sri Mahaprabhuji has explained his followers of his own path in his scriptures in great details in various ways about the subject of transcendental life through rendering service, remembrance, and in that life, every restriction, situation coming in devotion, expressed the form of that service and remembrance very lucidly. So now in this scripture, here he is telling about the subject of situation of living entities posthumously or reward obtained by the living entities who led their complete life according to those orders. In the beginning of the scripture, Yadrushi means the kind of services of Lord previously explained, and its reward as tenaciousness and the perfection in mindful service is being bestowed only by this transcendental giving. All the transcendental desires expressed next in service of Supreme Lord with persistent determination and obtaining mellows of pastimes with Supreme Lord in situation of addiction. All these desires get fulfilled, but this giving is dependent on the desire of Supreme Lord and not one-time factor. This living entity is served for how much time, in which time service is performed, in which place services has been executed. Service executed in impure countries has been accepted by Supreme Lord. Here time and place are not an abstraction, but the desire of Supreme Lord is ultimate, and the only Lord himself bestows to living entity the right to services according to his own desire, and then accordingly the living entity obtains the reward. The acceptance of living entity service according to his Lord, will and reward also is obtained by the desire of Supreme Lord. Sevafalam Vivaranam scripture. In this scripture, Sri Mahaprabhuji is giving details of the subject of three kinds of living entities according to difference in their rights of service and respective three kinds of reward. So, graceful grace, pushti pushti, graceful regulated, pushti maryada, and grace mundane, pushti pravahi, and their respective rewards. Transcendental capabilities, alaukik samarthya, merging with Lord, sayujya, and physical capable of serving in spiritual planets like Vaikunt, Gologadam. So first is grace, pushti. This living entity remains connected with mellows for pastimes with Supreme Lord, all the time living in emotions of union and separation continuously. Due to remaining in continuous emotion of Supreme Lord, obtains the emotion of soul of everyone, Sarvatma Bhava, and due to that experiences Brahma in everything, everywhere, whatever exists, all that is Brahma only, and will believe that whatever is happening is according to the desire of Brahma. The living entity is completely dependent on that Brahma, and everything happening to him, living entity, happens accordingly. While experiencing in similar way, the vision of that living entity becomes full of pastimes of Lord, and due to that, it enjoys the pastimes of Supreme Lord any time, in every situation. After reaching in such an excellent state, staying blessed in the addiction state, they keep on talking, singing, dancing, laughing, weeping, etc. with the Supreme Lord. This living entity can enjoy own divine pastimes with Supreme Lord on this earth with this body by obtaining tenaciousness even in this material world only, which is very rare reward. Owing to this transcendental capability, no obstruction can occur in his service, as well as the time and the action can't come in between him and the Lord, said Purushottam Dasji. And after leaving the body as well, they can obtain service of Supreme Lord called Purna Purushottam through the transcendental body. About the transcendental strength, some commentators have the opinion that the bliss of cultivation owing to emotion of soul of everyone and their strength of ability to experience that is called transcendental strength. Some commentators also say that the joy of divine union with Supreme Lord and ability to forbear the experience of separation is called transcendental strength. Since there is no possibility of experiencing joy of union and forbear experience of separation without complete transcendental strength, because the living entity can't forbear the joy of union and sadness of separation without complete transcendental strength. Grace regulation, Pushti Maryada. The result of service of living entities on the path of grace and regulation is said to be salvation of merging with divine form of Lord. This merges into a Supreme Lord called Purushottam and not in Akshardham, like living entities of path of knowledge is. Because of this living entity is not just a devotee of path of regulation, but the path of grace and regulation. In path of knowledge, a living entity achieves merging with Lord by entering in Akshara Brahma, and living entity of path of grace and regulation achieves merging with Lord as Purushottam. Those living entities on path of grace and regulations are sometimes bestowed with the reward of experience of joy of cultivation by Supreme Lord by manifesting them outside from his own form. For example, prior to Ras, Ananta Griha Gata Gopijana had achieved the salvation of union with the form of Lord, but sometimes even then Lord manifests them outside, give them reward of joy of Ras and reunion them with his form. But in this reward, living entity is dependent and the Brahm is independent. because of Lord has desire to perform pastimes with those living entities, only then Lord manifests them outside and then enjoy pastimes with them. While the grace living entities, Lord fulfills the desire according to their wishes. Therefore, in the pastimes happening with grace living entities, living entity is independent, and Brahm, out of love for those loving entities, wishfully become dependent. The third, grace mundane, Pushti Prabhahi. This living entities obtain body capable of serving in spiritual planets like Vaikuntha. This living entity also enters Vyapi Vaikuntha Golok, but taking form of animal, birds, planets, tumult, creeper, herbs, etc., and achieves the place. Although the service of everyone is accepted, there being divine form, chirp of birds, catalyst, nutrition, material, greenery, creeper, leaves, etc., for enjoyment in arbored service of flowers, and tumult creepers, etc., in decoration, garland, etc., of Lord and fruits, etc., is accepted in the form of the foodstuff in this way. Although everything is only emotive and reward, but reward of connecting in service of Supreme Lord through transcendental senses is only obtained by living entities of path of grace.
उद्वेगः प्रतिबन्धो वा भोगो वा स्यात्तु बाधकम्.
Verse 2, line 2.
Agitation or restriction or sense enjoyment are obstructions. After explaining three rewards, explaining subject of three obstructions coming in the service, agitation, restrictions, and sense of enjoyment. So the first obstruction coming in the service of agitation is the decomposer. Agitation, yani udveg. The form symptoms service is to thread the consciousness in the service. It is natural for consciousness not to be in service if mind is filled with worldly divine agitation. So how can result be available? Therefore, in Navratnam scripture, Sri Mahaprabhuji has expressed means to get rid of this agitation and given message to all his living entities to remain engaged in prescribed duty without being disturbed by atonement, etc. For even cleaning of their consciousness, this message is given in Antakaran Prabodh scripture. It is necessary to connect blissfully in the service full of bliss from Supreme Lord by reciting that incalculable bliss form, Supreme Lord, in their heart, Aganitananda. The agitation could be an obstruction here. Here is warning followers of his own path about it. Restriction, pratibandha. The restriction could be second obstruction in the service. These restrictions are two types. One is simple restriction, worldly or Vedic, or second restriction created by Lord himself. The simple restrictions could be removed with wisdom. That is, if any worldly activity or worldly responsibility appears at the time of service, then this type of restriction could be taken care of by regulation, planning and wisdom. Similarly, the simple restriction of Vedic activities like donations, pious activities at the time of Yagnopavit, marriage of sun, eclipse, etc. can be avoided by simple insistence to execute them after service of Lord. And the second restriction is created by Lord himself: impurity, sutak, postnatal period, vardhi, illness, etc., bodily incapability. In such situation, the only remedy is to keep mind engaged in Supreme Lord healthily, assuming it to be wish of Supreme Lord. By medicine, etc. measures, if the illness is not cured, that is chronic disease, then one must accept that Lord is not yet ready to give reward and still have demonic tendencies. Since in such time mind will also be unhealthy, consciousness will not be able to connect with Supreme Lord, which is an obstruction in the obtaining the results. Sense of enjoyment, bhog. Sense of enjoyment is so described as to be two types: material sense enjoyment and divine sense enjoyment. When while executing service, mind gets attracted for eating, drinking, or any other sense enjoyment, and obstruction manifests in the service, then patiently control the mind and its senses and gradually try to engage that sense of enjoyment in the service of Lord. If one likes to eat and drink nice foodstuff, then accept various foodstuffs after offering them to Supreme Lord. accepting clothes and jewelry as remnant after offering them to Supreme Lord. In this way, achieve betterment by converting every material sense enjoyment into transcendental. The vice becomes nice. The material sense enjoyment are always disposable if done without connecting it with Supreme Lord, and the offered sense enjoyment relating to Supreme Lord are always result in transcendental strength. By this process, gradually desire of sense enjoyment can be reiterated because those desire connect with Supreme Lord who is beyond the three modes of material nature, Nirguna. In this way, for obtaining transcendental result, one must convert the material sense enjoyment into transcendental sense enjoyment, and thus they do not become obstructions in getting the desired result. Otherwise, material sense of enjoyment are always disposable.
अकर्तव्यं भगवतः सर्वथा चेद्गतिर्नहि यथा वा तत्त्वनिर्धारो विवेकः साधनं मतम्.
Verse 3.
When Lord Himself does not offer the result of action to any entity, then they don't make any spiritual process of the consciousness, or by whatever process the element is determined, discretion of that kind shall be maintained, and that is considered as only instrument. Sometimes even from the devotee who has obtained grace of Lord, the big mistakes like hatred, disrespect towards general living entities, such faults can happen, and due to such a fault, if Supreme Lord creates obstruction in service, then assume it to be desire of Supreme Lord only. When due to own fault, if Lord present the obstruction, then accept it. No other way of progress possible right now, because He is supreme, absolute element, and everything is happening according to His desire. One must accept what Supreme Lord do. It is for the ultimate benefit of the living entity. In such times, losing patience, and if thought of getting result from some other demigod arises, then it is necessary to get rid of such thought. In descriptions like Vyasa Sutra, it has been described that all the result is obtained from some Supreme Lord only. Transcendental result can only be given by Supreme Lord Shri Krishna only. Thus, intelligently decide on the actual element. This is the only process in which such situation and scripture says that devotion can only be executed by divine living entities. And look at the decision of element at the side of living entity. Then if ever the living entity is overpowered by demonic nature for some time, then during that time the service devotion can't be performed. But as soon as the demonic nature subsides, then living entity reconnects in devotion. Such entities are called demonic charged Aveshi Asuri living entities, and natural demonic Sahaj Asuri living entities, according to the desire of Supreme Lord, remains as it is since the start of material creation till its annihilation. All this happens according to the desire of Supreme Lord. Therefore, assuming Supreme Lord to be supreme element and to have discretion, and only that discretion is the solution of removal of that distress.
बाधकानां परित्यागो भोगेप्येकं तथा परं निष्प्रत्यूहं महान् भोगः प्रथमे विशते सदा.
Verse 4.
For obtaining result of service, obstructions are to be abandoned. First one is to abandon, but not the second one, because that transcendental path has no obstruction, since the transcendental sense of enjoyment are great, while the material sense enjoyments are always an obstruction. Obtaining result of services means first material sense of enjoyment being obstruction should be rejected, and transcendental sense enjoyment could happen as a result because they are requested, offered to Lord, and they are being accepted as the remnants of Supreme Lord bestows transcendental results by providing transcendental strength. Therefore, this second sense enjoyment, which is transcendental, is not supposed to be rejected, while by material sense enjoyment, body as well as mind, everything going to be polluted and become material, and there remains no possibility for obtaining transcendental result. So its rejection is very necessary.
सविघ्नोऽल्पो घातकः स्याद् बलादेतौ सदा मतौ द्वितीये सर्वथा चिन्ता त्याज्या संसारनिश्चयात्.
Verse 5.
It is considered that material sense enjoyment are always filled with obstruction for very small time period and very dangerous in devotional services. And in second restriction created by Supreme Lord, world has been decided by Lord for living entity, therefore reject the worries of altogether. If the conscious mind goes into material sense enjoyment, then prudently think that such enjoyment is very limited time period, because that joy is related with material body. The strength of body is limited and the time of body is limited. So with that body, eternal joy can't be achieved, and that has associated obstructions as well. If a foodie, then the foodstuffs, etc. After living, small joy can because of many incitements like stomachache, etc. Similarly, all other senses after temporary joy can be the cause of bodily disease. Therefore, all the material sense enjoyment can be very dangerous. The order is to perform devotional service in mood of pastime, even in transcendental situation. So even to endure those intense emotions of pastime, those thoughts of material sense enjoyment are dangerous. Therefore, this first sense enjoyment, that is material sense enjoyment, shall be forcefully rejected, and the second in restriction presented by Supreme Lord himself, think intelligently that Lord now only wants to give such material world. Lord has decided that for us, so such worry is worth rejecting. In Sarva Nirnaya 247 verse, scripture, Sri Mahaprabhuji has told about the subject of situation in which performing service of Lord is prohibited. If due to intense demonic nature, if senses are not willing to engage in devotional service, then don't engage forcefully in that service. Due to an old age or incapability of body or weakness is there in the body, then in such situation, services can be avoided. Family, social or political point of view, as a servant of whomsoever we are under their power, if we are constrained in it, then leave the service considering as it wish of Supreme Lord only. Even in execution of service, in mind remains agitated or attachment stays, then if does not have emotions suitable for service of Supreme Lord, then don't engage in that services. If the members of the family don't have feeling for services of Supreme Lord and are against it, our service is a pain for them, then leave the services. In such situations, Sri Mahaprabhuji is clearly ordering that leaving this service, assuming it to desire of Supreme Lord head, lead a life like shelter of chanting, etc., and live with knowledge of importance of Lord and surrendered life, and if that is also not possible, then accept that the Lord is not willing to give ultimate reward of human life in the life by removing intense attachments of the world.
नन्वाद्ये दातृता नास्ति तृतीये बाधकं गृहम्.
If transcendental service is not becoming possible, then Lord is not willing to give first reward, transcendental strength, because there exists third obstruction, that is attachment of home, which takes one to worldly path. Adhya means the first reward, transcendental strength, alaukik samarthya. If that reward is elusive, then conclude the reason for that is our conscious is in third obstruction, that is attachment of home, and only due to that the divine service with emotions of pastimes of Lord does not happen and just remain an action without emotion, which means that the necessary realization of do not exist about the form of self and the Supreme Lord in service, and service does not happen like emotions of devotees of VRAJ. At the time of service of controller of VRAJ, that is Vrajadish, it is necessary to connect with emotions of divine pastimes of VRAJ, pastimes of devotees of VRAJ, etc. It is necessary to understand that the Lord is not bestowing the result because at the time of service worldly thoughts are engaging mind, and if the home is obstruction to resolve this problem, then only He is ordering that Gruham Sarvatma Tyajya. The only solution is leaving the home. With that, when attachment with the home, family member, etc., ego attachments of this world goes away, then service becomes divine, and then only service becomes according to His order with feeling of the form, Swarupa Bhavna, feeling of emotions, Bhav Bhavna, and feeling of pastime, Leela Bhavna, and all such divine services can fructify.
अवश्येयं सदा भाव्या सर्वमन्यन्मनो भ्रमः.
Verse 6, line 2.
Paragraph 6. Lord will surely bestow the reward, then such feeling should be maintained always. Everything else is only illusion of mind. The living entity of the path of Pushti has connected with the Supreme Lord after offering everything to Lord Atmanivedanam with selfless devotion. In Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavad, Lord has said multiple times that I very much like such surrendered devotees, and many examples are available for that. Accepting many incarnations, in such incarnation pastimes, Lord has fulfilled all the desires of such devotees. So Lord will give result in that similar way to us as well. With this feeling, always one remains confident. If ever delay is there in getting the result or some such unfavorable situation manifests, then if suspicion arises about the mercy of Lord or love of Lord, etc., or other such thoughts appear, then assume all this is due to the illusion of mind only. These thoughts are like doubting the capability of Supreme Lord. If things appear different than what they are called illusion, and therefore such opposite thoughts should be rejected, considering them as illusion of mind. If ever, while performing the service due to delay in realization, if opposite thoughts are for Lord manifest, then considering them as an illusion of mind, keep faith on the mercy of gracious Supreme Lord and imagination of any other reward or obstruction other than 3 rewards and 3 obstructions told above in an illusion mind only.
तदीयैरपि तत्कार्यं पुष्टौ नैव विलम्बयेत्. गुणक्षोभेऽपि द्रष्टव्यम् एतदेवेति मे मतिः. कुसृष्टिरत्र वा काचित् उत्पद्येत स वै भ्रमः.
Paragraph 7. Devotees has to do the same work. Remain confident. Lord will not delay bestowing His mercy. Even our quality like anger due to material modes like ignorance, etc., and even delay appear in obtaining the result. My conclusion is that the Supreme Lord will always act in our interest. Here, whatever kind of bad suspicion manifests, all those illusions only. Devotees should stay carefree about contemplating about the subject of 3 rewards described earlier and faithfully believing that Supreme Lord will bestow such mercy on us as well and will not delay bestowing His mercy. If ever delay occurs, then it is due to our own material mode of ignorance, etc., impatience and dissatisfaction, like agitation manifests. If any such doubts manifest, then all this is an illusion manifested due to our own nature. The Lord will be merciful only. My conclusion is that, considering that this sustained firm faith, such is the order of Sri Mahaprabhuji. If after execution service for a long time due to delay in realization of result, then forgetting the glories of mercy of Lord, If the living entity due to impatience connects with some other demigod goddess that is shelter of any other than Supreme Lord, then such devotee will miss the result. Hence, to protect from this situation, then he have been ordering. Thus ends the Sevafalam prepared by Sri Vallabhacharya ji. In this way, Sri Vallabhacharya has started 16 scriptures with Sri Munastakam, where the reward of tenaciousness has been told, and here in the end also Sevafal prescripture, ending the 16 scriptures, showing reward for tenaciousness for devotees on the path of grace, Vaishnavas by divine process. Shri Vallabha Desh ki Jai.